might be soursop leaves, it might be different types of leaves. And what these are doing is they are actually clearing the body from parasites. All of
Yes.
these things are anti-parasitical. And anybody
Yeah.
who has a grandmother like that knows that whenever granny saw you, she's trying to give you a washout. Now, what's very important about this is that children who grew up in the Caribbean or in the South and Africa, you literally would see worms coming out of other children, different parts of their body. You literally would see the worms coming out. The problem is that when we reach adulthood, we no longer do the washouts. And
Mm.
therein lays the problem. People hit adulthood and they stop doing parasite cleanses that their grandmother used to do because it tastes terrible, right? So it's like you only do it because you were forced to do it as a child. But now you hit
False.
adulthood, yeah, now you're not doing it. And guess what? These parasites build up. And because of this parasitic buildup, you're seeing all these types of diseases, in particular cancer. And that's what we talked about last time I was on. There's a roundabout way for us to get there, but what I have found is that the overwhelming majority of cancers are caused by intracellular parasites and intracellular worms, and we can see it under microscopes. We can see it in the studies that they've had since the 1800s and the 1890s, the parasitic origin of cancer. It's all in my book. I mean, I have it all in my book. I have all of the studies. I went over it last time. People who, are interested, you can go to herbalresults.net. You can look at the book. It's called The Successful Eradication of Cancer Using Intracellular Parasite Theory. You can go on our website, testimonials. You'll see several cancer reversals, people with stage 4. And what we're doing is that we're using anti-parasitic method to eradicate people's cancer. Very recently, we just had a cancer reversal of a woman who was given 90 days to live. Her name is Renee Denard out of Tampa, Florida, and she had liver cancer that metastasized to her kidneys. And she took our olive leaf extract, and that's all she did. She refused chemotherapy, she refused radiation and surgery. And what she says is that she refused to buy her oncologist a Lamborghini. That's what she said, basically. That she didn't want to be billed $300,000 for something that wasn't going to work, but was just going to make her sicker. She's 76 years old. She said, if I can't ride this out, I'm definitely not going out with chemo, because her husband went through chemo. She talks about it. But the interviews, what I've done for the last decade or so is I've chronicled all of these stories that we have of people having reversals, because no one's going to believe me if I say it, right? Because I could just be a grifter. I could be someone selling, wolf tickets. But what we've done is that we've come with a high standard of proof and evidence. People telling their stories of being in hospital beds, being told they got 90 days to die. And her 90th day was August 16th. She's alive and well. Her high blood pressure is reversed. Her diabetes is reversed. Her cancer is gone. And she just took our olive leaf extract that we make at Herbal Results, man. And so it's very important for people to do anti-parasitic cleanses. I find olive leaf extract to be one of the strongest anti-parasitics, but it's not the only one. And I would tell people, use a combination of different ones throughout the year to be able to ward off cancer, because we're finding that cancer is actually caused by these parasites by and large. And once you get rid of them, you get rid of the cancer.
Absolutely amazing. Um, when I'm looking at the uptick in a variety, various different what they call quote unquote cancers in this country, and I'm seeing a correlation between the decline in gut health, right? And I'm understanding that there has to be a connection, a correlation with, people's deterioration in terms of their gut and their intestines. Normally this is definitely where they would identify parasite infestation, if we would, you know. Um, can you speak to that? Is there a connection with the increase of autoimmune diseases
Oh,
in these
absolutely.
particular cancers, the decrease in gut health?
Yes, absolutely. So here's the deal, man. We talk about first principles thinking. And first principles thinking is it's a very expedient way of solving problems, whether it be engineering problems, scientific problems, relationship problems, health problems. So first principles thinking asks you to do two things. First principles thinking says that if there's a problem set in front of you, uh, first identify what are the immutable truths of this problem. So, in other words, let's just say you're dealing with something in technology uh, or engineering. Well, the immutable truths are, let's just say, the laws of gravity, right? You have
Yeah.
the laws of electromagnetism. You have these different immutable truths, right?
Yeah.
And that is now that's the playing field that you're dealing with, like the football field with the boundaries that you're dealing with. Anything outside of those boundaries, you don't waste your time on. You only deal with what's in the boundaries because those are the immutable truths. And then within the immutable truths, you find out one thing. You find out what is the greatest limiting factor for this particular problem. And if you solve that greatest limiting factor, you end up solving that problem. So what do I mean by that? Let's just say you wanted to put electric vehicles into the marketplace, right? This example I always give. Well, you have internal combustion engine vehicles and they go a certain mileage and they have their problems in terms of needing a mechanic every couple months and what have you, but this is what people are using. But you're saying now that you want to put electric vehicles into the market. Well, electric vehicles have to follow the laws of electrodynamics, the energy conservation of energy, all those principles of electronics and what have you, and electromagnetism and all of that. Well, those are the boundaries that you're dealing with, but the greatest limiting factor, remember, there's two things: the immutable truths, that's your boundaries, and then the greatest limiting factor. The greatest limiting factor for electric vehicles is not the brake technology, is not the tires, it's not the windshields, it's not the engineering design, it's not marketing, it's the battery technology. The
Mm.
battery technology is the greatest limiting factor for electric vehicles being a thing. So here's the deal: all your money, all your resource, all your talent has to be spent on the battery technology because the batteries are going to have to get you just about as far as a gas vehicle. It's going to have to charge very quickly to give you, a good distance in a short amount of time. And if you don't solve these problems, you cannot have an electric vehicle that people would, and it also has to be inexpensive, right? It can't
Right.
be more expensive than the gas. So you have to solve all of these problems before it can be competitive with the gas vehicle industry. And if you don't solve those problems with battery technology, it's a non-starter. You could waste your money on everything else, but if you don't spend your money on the battery technology, it's not going to happen. That is focusing on the limiting factor. Okay. When it comes to health, it turns out that there's immutable truths of health. And you can look at a tree. So I live on a mango orchard, right? And I grow mango trees. And these trees, you can watch them grow and you can see which trees get sick and which trees grow real bountiful and give you great fruit. And it boils down to two things. The health of a tree, fruit tree, boils down to two things. One, here's the immutable truths of a tree: sunlight and water. They need sunlight and they need water. Okay. Now, and they do two different things too. They grow with gravity and against gravity. So the roots grow down and the everything grows up. So these are the mutable truths of a tree. But the limiting factors are: one, for the health, is toxic inputs, and two, not enough nutritive inputs. Those two things. That's it. So therefore, if you want a fruit tree to be strong and not susceptible to diseases, you have to remove the toxic inputs and you have to feed it the nutritive inputs. So fruit trees need magnesium, iron, nitrogen, manganese. They need all of these different things that is nutrition for the tree. And when you give that tree its nutrition, all of a sudden now that tree grows to be big and strong and will be able to fight off all of the diseases in the area that afflict other trees, and it will fight it off by itself.
Mm.
Same thing applies to the human being now. The human being's health is dependent on two things, and basically two things only: toxic inputs and not enough nutritive inputs. That's it. And if you solve for these two things, you solve for disease. So what we find is that the toxic inputs that most human beings are feeding themselves are those things that cause inflammation. Because here's language again. When you break down medical nomenclature, 90% of all medical diseases end with one suffix, itis.
Mm.
Itis. Itis is a Latin word that just means inflammation, flame, or fire.
Mm.
So what they've told you, if you study linguistics, linguistics always gives you the cheat code to what's really happening. So when you study linguistics, knowing that itis is Latin and how did it become Latin is because the Roman Empire conquered Western Europe. They're the ones who brought them education. Julius Caesar, if you read his, people should read Julius Caesar's diary. He kept a diary. When he invaded England and the British Isles, he said that those people there, he said that the Britons and the Anglo-Saxons were so illiterate that they were not even fit to be slaves. This is what Julius Caesar said. That's what he said. And what happened was the Romans brought science, religion, and everything else to them. And so when you're studying for the SATs in America, and when we were younger, the SATs, you remember the SATs to go to college?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
The English part, for the vocabulary part, the cheat code was to study Latin. Because all of the big words in America in the English language are Latin words. Because the Romans are the ones who brought them the updates in medicine, the update dates in law. So that's why law is called jurisprudence. Juris is Latin for law. And then when you have
Right.
medical nomenclature, all medical nomenclature, and then religion, the Bible was written in Latin. And so to be an educated person, you had to speak the language of the invader, of the successful invader. That's why we speak in English right now. If we were not successfully invaded as a people by Europeans, me and you would be speaking our own indigenous languages in our communication. But we're speaking English now, or some of us are speaking French, and some of us, and we want to divide ourselves based on who conquered us. It makes no
Right.
sense.
Oh,
Right? Now, yeah, so here's the
and
thing.
then evidence of your conquer.
Yep. So in medical nomenclature, they give you the Latin name of a body part, and then they put itis at the end of it, and that's the sickness. So inflammation. So you have dermatitis, inflammation of the skin; conjunctivitis, inflammation of the eyes; myocarditis, cardis, heart, inflammation of the heart; periodontitis. You have all of these different, prostatitis, laryngitis. All of these different itises are telling you inflammation. And so then the next question is, what is the cause of inflammation? If the majority of diseases are itis diseases, well, inflammation only comes from three places: one, injury; two, infection; three, food. The majority of inflammation comes from people's food in industrial society. And so inflammation is always coupled by swelling, because that heat zone causes swelling. And we know what inflammation does to the teeth because of what sugar does to the teeth. Sugar inflames the teeth, inflames the gums, and actually can burn a hole into your teeth. We call that a cavity. And if sugar can burn a hole into your teeth, which is the hardest part of your body along with your bones, then imagine what sugar is doing to your soft internal organs.
Mm.
It is causing chronic inflammation and burning throughout your body. And that's where you get all of these itises from. And so what happens when you're talking about gut health and what people are eating, remember what I said about the toxic inputs. If you're eating refined carbohydrates, because that is part of the business model of the food industry, because the food industry had a limiting factor. You know what the limiting factor of the food industry is? One thing: food gets rotten.
Yeah.
So their problem is, we want to be able to ship out this food,
Shelf life.
products that we want to be able to ship it out all over the world, and we don't want it to get rotten because we want it to sell.
Right.
Their problem was food gets rotten. So what did they do? They hire chemists and biologists to now reformulate the food through chemical processes and add preservatives and strip out anything that would cause food to get rotten, which is stripping out the fiber. So now you have what you call, what do they call it? Refined wheat, refined flour. That just means that they have chemicalized it and stripped it from its nutrients that actually cause it to get rotten, because they want to be able to put it in a box